Hello and welcome to this demonstration where I'll be showing you how we can create this engraved Christmas tea light holder using ArtCAM Insignia 2015 R2. So I'm going to start by creating the top vectors and the toolpaths. I'm going to go straight over to ArtCAM Insignia and create a new model. So we're going to have a height of 50mm and a width of 350. Resolution up nice and high, and we'll have the origin in the bottom left hand corner. You can just change it by dynamically clicking on this image here, and I'll be working in millimeters. So I'm going to say OK to that, and you can see my model has been created. So I want to start creating the circle vectors. I'm just going to create one circle vector, which is the diameter of my tea light, so that's 38mm. That's just standard size in there, and I'll close it down. Now I want to create 7 copies of this, or 6 copies, so I have 7 in total. So I'm going to go to my block copy tool. We're going to do a block copy. Distance is our gap, so we'll have a gap between each circle of 10mm, and we just want to have one single row of those with 7 of them. So we'll say apply, and we can center that in the model like so. So now I've got these, I can group them. So that's shortcut for that is Control G. And then I'm going to go to my 3D view. I'm going to click on Toolpaths, and I'm going to create a 2D area clearance toolpath. So I want to machine inside the selected vectors. I want a finish depth of 17mm, which is about the depth of a standard tea light. And I'm going to machine this with a wood or plastic tool. We're going to use a 6mm end mill, like so. I'm going to choose an offset strategy. I'm going to set up my material. My material is going to be 35mm thick, and I'll say OK. So let's say calculate now, and you can see toolpath have been created. So I can simulate this. And there we have it. Now that would work as it is, but what I'm going to do is actually create a beveled edge around each one of these tea light holders, just so we have eliminating that sharp edge there, make it look a bit nicer, and it'll actually make it easier to get the tea light out. So I'm going to just delete that simulation. I'm going to turn the vectors back on. Here you can see we've got a 2D representation of our toolpath, so I can turn that off. With the same vectors selected, I'm going to go to Toolpaths, and this time I'm going to create a Bevel Carving toolpath. Selected vectors will have a finish depth of 1.5mm, and now I can choose my carving tool. So I'm going to choose a V-bit 110 degree, and then I'll calculate now. We get this warning just telling us we're going to have a truncated bevel, and that's fine, so we'll say OK, and you can see the toolpath has been created and is shown in red. So what I can do now is simulate all toolpaths, and there we have it. So we've got a nice bevel, and that is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing now as well. So what I want to do is save and export my toolpaths. So I'm just going to browse to a new folder on my desktop, and I'll just create one in here. So we'll call this toolpaths. Go in here and we'll call these top, because they're the toolpaths which we're machining on top of our candle holder. So I'm going to choose my post processor. So I'm going to be using Adaptron and working in metric. I'm going to save my toolpaths to separate files and append toolpath details to file names, and that's because we're using a manual tool changer. So I'm going to save that, close it down. If I navigate to that folder now, you'll see we've got this folder called toolpaths, and then we've got 2 toolpaths created, named top, MCR files, and I can open these with Notepad, and then you can see the code that's going to control my machine tool. So what I'm going to do now is save this. So I'm just going to call it top. That's going to be saved as a .art file, and I can close it down. Now I want to start creating the pattern for the front of my design. So I can go back to that folder, and go back a level, and what I've got here is an image that I've just grabbed off the internet of a holly leaf and some berries. I'm going to drag and drop that into ArtCAM Insignia. We're going to say OK, and I'm going to change the transparency of this. Okay, so I'm going to start drawing, and I want to draw smooth polylines and just keep toggling between smooth and sharp when I get to these pointy edges. I'm going to trace around my holly leaf. So we can do that very quickly by pressing S on the keyboard, and you'll see the S symbol disappears and we have a sharp corner rather than a smooth corner. So I'm going to do that all the way around. And there we've got our holly leaf created. What I'm just going to do here is make a little change. I've got a little kink in it there, so I'm going to go to node editing mode, and I can just pull this guy out like so. So we'll exit node editing, so I entered by pressing N on the keyboard, exiting the same, and now I'm going to create another vector. So we'll snap straight to the bottom. I want to make sure I've got smooth polylines on, so I'll press S on the keyboard, and we can go all the way up to the top there. I'll hit spacebar to finish that. Now what I want to do is add some extra internals in there. Okay, so I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to snap to each one of these corners and just create some internals like so. So spacebar to finish. And it doesn't really matter exactly where these go. We've got some artistic license with this. If you want to make any changes, again, go to node editing. We can select anything we want to change. Put a bit more of a curve in this guy here, and we'll have it like so. So now what I want to do is just create a copy of this outer. So if I just expand my vector layers, you can see we've got one vector layer, which is the default layer. What I want to do is create a copy of this because I'm going to use it later. So I'm going to copy and paste, and it gets pasted in exactly the same position. Then I'm going to right click and move vectors to a new layer. So you can see here a new layer has been created, and I've actually popped that vector on there. So if I turn my image off, you can just see the vector now, and it's on there. I'm going to turn that layer off and just work on the default layer. I'm going to select all my vectors and deselect this outer one by holding down the shift key, and I'm going to offset my vectors. So I want to offset both sides, radius, and we'll delete the original vectors. I'm just going to pull it out till we've got something that looks a bit like this. That looks okay to me, and close it down. Now I want to select all of the vectors and trim vectors. Okay, so it's this option here. And what this does is it makes isolated patches where our vectors intersected. So what we could do now is select all of the regions that we don't want, okay, and delete them. So you can see what I'm getting at now, but there's actually no need. I'm going to go to my 3D view and look from the top. I'm just going to select all of the regions that I am interested in. And before I go to my shape editor, I'm going to change the resolution. Okay, so I'm going to increase the resolution to the highest it can possibly be and say OK. So now I'm going to go into the shape editor and I'm going to subtract a round of 45 degrees. And we'll apply that, close it down, and you can see the result. Now I'm going to hide the default layer and just show vector layer 2. I'm going to select the outer vector, go back into the shape editor, just hide the vector visibility, and I'm going to give it a start height of 2. And we're going to add that. So I can say apply, close that down, and now all I'm going to do is give a couple of smoothing passes. So we can smooth the entire relief, 2 smoothing passes, and I'll say apply. Now I'm going to open up the clip art library. I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to go to reliefs and say make new folder. So we'll call this ArtCAM Candle Demo and say OK. You can see we've got a new folder here, and now I can drag my relief over into that folder, and there's my holly leaf. So now what I'm going to do is close this down. I'm not going to save my changes, I don't need to, I've already saved it in my clip art library, and I'm going to start creating the front. So I'm going to create a new model. This time the height is 35 millimeters, and everything else can be kept the same, so we'll say OK. There's my model created, and I'm going to first of all create the text that goes in the middle. So I'm going to open the text creation. We can click in the middle. I'm going to choose my font to be Times New Roman. I'm going to set my size to be 25 millimeters, and you can choose between points, millimeters or inches, and we'll just have it left aligned, and I can start typing. So I'm going to just write Noel and then say create. Now I'm going to center that in my model, and now I'm ready to start creating my pattern. So I'm going to go over to the 3D view now, turn on my vectors, and I'm going to view from the top and open up my clip art library. I'm going to navigate to the folder I just created, so ArtCAM Candle Demo, and here I can import that holly leaf that I just created. If I zoom out, you can see it's all the way up there. So I'll just bring it down so it's in the middle, and I'm going to resize it to start with, because obviously it's far too big. So I'm going to link the width and height. We'll set the height to be 12. I'm going to set the Z range to be 1 millimeter and apply. Now if we zoom in, you can see our holly leaf is there. So we can position him somewhere up here. And all I'm going to do now is do a mirror, just mirror over left. So I've got one holly leaf facing one way and one the other way. And I'm going to use these to create my pattern. Okay, so going to move this guy out of the way. Want to have 2 leaves this way round. This is all up to your own artistic judgment. So I can press T on the keyboard to enter the transform tool, hold down Control to create copies like so. And we'll have a looking a bit like this. And then I'll copy this guy here, so holding down my Control, and we'll just rotate over here. And then we'll have a couple more of this orientation. Over there. Pull this guy around, and we'll just have a couple more. Okay, so it looks something like this. can always use your arrow keys to select some and nudge them around, but I'm quite happy with that. Now I'm going to start creating the stem. Okay, so I'm going to go to my Create Polyline tool. I'm just going to start around here and create a nice smooth polyline that goes all the way up, around like so, and spacebar to finish. Now I can just join up all of these regions. So I'll leave a bit of a gap, just come down here and create a join. We'll create something that looks a bit like this. We'll have some berries maybe up here. So put a vector down like so. And then I'll move around here. Okay, so we've got a couple more. And I think that's it. That looks alright to me. We'll close that down. I'm going to select all of these polylines now. And I'm going to do an offset. So just like I did with the holly leaf, and join them all together so it's one single vector. I'm going to go to offset vectors, both sides, and we can just pull them out. Or we can type in a set distance. Okay, so I've typed in 0.5 millimeters, and we can offset and close that down. Now I'm going to create some berries. So I'm going to just use a circle, diameter of 2 millimeters, and say create. And then we can just hold down the control and copy these in the same way that we did previously. And we'll have some over here as well. And then I'll just copy all of these three and pop them around here and just do a transform and rotate them around using the arrow keys to position them. Okay, so once you've got all of your berries in place, everything looks okay. What I'm going to do is zoom out so you can see everything. I'm going to select everything that's on the right hand side, and we can mirror a cross model. So we've got two of them. So now I'm going to select all of the vectors and the berries. I'm going to group them all together. So Control G is the shortcut. Now I'm going to go into my shape editor, and we're going to do a round subtract of 55. Say apply. And I also want to paste those clip art leaves down. So I can select them all, like so. Probably the quickest way is to select everything and then just deselect that group. And then now I'm going to go to my transform tool so I can set my paste options. So I'm going to paste, I'm going to add, paste outline vector, and we'll do -0.2 and say paste. That's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to select all of the vectors that have just been pasted. They're all grouped, and I'm going to offset them. Okay, so I just want to offset them outwards. I'm going to do it dynamically, so I'll zoom in. That looks okay to me, maybe a bit smaller actually. And we can just close that down. So we can group all of these vectors as well. We're going to use that to create a boundary for our toolpaths. So now I can start creating my toolpath. Now our pattern is ready. I'm going to start with the text. I'm going to go to Toolpaths, and I'm going to create a V-bit carving toolpath inside my selected vectors, and I'm going to choose a 32 V-bit carving tool, 110 degrees, and calculate now. And I'm going to set up my material to be 50 millimeters. Okay, so we can calculate now. Next, I'm going to machine my stem, so I can select that group. Go to my toolpaths, and I'm going to create a 3D machine relief toolpath. Inside selected vectors, we're going to use a 0.5 millimeter ball nose, and I'm going to choose an offset classic for that strategy. And we can say calculate now. So you can see the toolpath's being created there. And finally, what we're going to do is create the machine relief toolpath to machine our holly leaves. So I can select that group and create a second machine relief toolpath. Inside selected vectors, this time I'm going to use a smaller finishing tool, a 1/4 millimeter ball nose. Select that, and we can keep this as raster. I'm just going to set the angle to be 45 degrees, and then I'll say calculate. Okay, so we've got all our toolpaths now. You can see them all in here. We've got 3, and I'm going to simulate all toolpaths. And there we have it. Here are all the toolpaths created for the front of our candle. So all I'd need to do now is go ahead and save those. We can do exactly what we did before. We can save. I'm going to browse to a folder. This time I'm going to call them front, so I know which toolpaths are related to which. And then I can save toolpaths separate files and append toolpath details to file names. Obviously I'm going to use the same machine, so I can choose the same post, and we can hit save. Close that down. We can navigate to that folder if we want. Look in toolpaths. So we've got 2 for top, 3 for front, and we're also told the order. We've got toolpath 1, toolpath 2, 1, 2, 3, and we're told what tool we're going to be using for each one of those, which is nice. So again, I could open one of these with Notepad and just check out my code there. So that was quite a quick demonstration showing you how you can create this engraved Tealight holder using ArtCAM Insignia 2015 R2. Thanks for watching.